Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Shag With Ray. I'm with my friend Paul Brown. We are in your home Tiki bar here in Burien, Washington. What is the name of your place, Paul?
The Riviera Room.
The Riviera Room. Why is it called that?
Well, when I first made my first bar, which was in the last house we were in, I always like classic cars, so I usually have a classic car. And at that time, I had a 65 Buick Riviera, so I just thought it sounded a little exotic, the Riviera Room. So eventually sold the Riviera and bought a convertible Thunderbird, but kept the name.
Yeah.
Didn't change it to Thunderbird Room, even though that would be okay.
That'd be a cool name. It's a cool thing that it's not like a car from more recently, like the Sonata Room or like the or the Pinto Room or
Pinto Room.
The Maverick Room would be cool.
Maverick Room could be good. There could be a few that could be good.
When you had me over here, you showed me your place, and like your Tiki bar is awesome. I love it. And you have a lot of art.
Yeah.
But one thing that stood out to me the most was this guy right here.
Yep.
And this is an original Shag that you bought.
Yep.
And we're going to talk about that.
Okay.
But before we talk about this piece of art, let's talk about Shag.
Okay.
And just, give us a little overview on who exactly Shag is. Well, his name's Josh Agel.
Josh Agel. So it's interesting with his name. A lot of people thought it somehow was related to, or maybe he was using like the Austin Power movie, which
shagging,
shag, and that word was used in there. But he predates those movies, and he wanted to create kind of this mysterious sounding name, and so it's basically the last two letters of his first name and the first two letters of his last name, and that's how he came up with that. So kind of how I came to kind of come across Shag's artwork. I lived in LA, and this was a long time ago, like 1999. I went into
99.
Yeah, I was just a young guy, single in LA, and went into this amazing bookstore. It's really a bookstore in LA called Wacko, and in the back of Wacko is a art gallery called La Luz de Jesus.
Okay.
So I went in one day just by myself, and I was walking through, and he had a show that was up in the art gallery, and I remember just kind of like walking through, and there was just something about it that really caught my eye, and so that was kind of how I came across Shag's artwork. I mean, and this was at the very absolute beginning of his career. I mean, this might have been his second or third show ever, and his very first show was in a small coffee shop. So, he was just getting started, and
he's kind of a shy guy, right?
Very
real,
shy.
Real kind of low key.
Yeah.
And he was in a band. He actually plays guitar, right?
Yeah, he was in a band called the Tiki Tones.
The Tiki Tones.
Yeah, kind of a. More of like an instrumental, a little bit surf inspired, a little bit lounge sound. But, my wife and I used to go and watch their shows after I kind of learned of Shag as the artist and found
So did you go to the shows knowing that that's him?
I did.
Or were you there like watching this band play? That guy looks like Shag.
No, I mean, we absolutely went because we knew Shag was in the band. Yeah. So we thought, well, this could be kind of cool. Let's, check this out. And I mean, and these were very small shows. They weren't, a real well-known band.
Yeah.
I mean, we went to shows where there were probably, maybe 30 people.
That's
there.
it.
And my wife and I, like, we loved it. We just, it was fun. It was entertaining. And I remember, one of the first shows, we saw, we kind of waited outside, and they came out,
like waiting for a groupie waiting.
Yeah, but but with 30 people, it's not much of a crowd. And he came out, and I kind of sauntered over and just said, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know I really like your art, really enjoy your art." And it was very interesting. His reaction, he was very just kind of like, "Thank you," looked down, didn't even really kind of look at me, and then just kind of walked off. And I remember thinking, "Oh, geez, maybe I, that wasn't, cool or, offended him." But then as I learned more about him through interviews and shows and stuff, he was, incredibly, shy, kind of reserved guy. So I think
was he trying to keep the two separate?
I think he was. From some of the interviews I read, he Tiki, or music was one of his passions, and that was kind of first. And he was started as a graphic artist.
Okay.
So he was doing a lot of graphic artwork, and then eventually. I think Otto van Stroheim asked him to do a little show at this coffee shop, and that was kind of how his separate art career started. But they were kind of very separate, at the beginning, and so it's interesting that I feel very fortunate that I kind of stumbled across him on the beginning of his career and sort of have seen now so long later, seen the trajectory of kind of his entire career that's just become, a massively successful.
Unbelievably successful.
From not only art, but the merchandising that he does, and the stuff with Disneyland, and in everything. It's been a pretty fascinating thing to kind of see from the the whole arc of his career.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, there's nothing like his art.
No.
There's a lot of imitators now.
Oh.
A lot of imitators, but his style is so unique. And the thing that I love about his work, which is the same thing that I love about Tiki, is the escapism, is the world building. And he creates his own worlds in his paintings.
Yeah.
And they talk about the Tiki revival, the second wave of Tiki that happened in like the 90s. Going into the early 2000s, and like one thing I keep on thinking about is like fezzes, like why, like there's certain things that are kind of like okay to be included in this whole Tiki thing, but aren't necessarily Tiki in and of itself, like fezzes and like other things. And I'm starting to realize it's like I think maybe Shag kind of like unofficially kind of wrote the rule book. I'm like, okay, well. This is, you can associate this with Tiki, and you can associate that with Tiki.
Yeah.
And, well, you said the name of his band was the Tiki Tone. So,
yeah.
But what is about his art that you love so much? What is it about that speaks to you the most?
In some ways, I think it's, and one of the things that I like is, I can't always exactly pinpoint what it is that I love about it so much. But, in all the different areas that he does, and he's certainly, far more than a Tiki artist now.
Oh, God,
and there's tons of, mid-century modern and retro influence. But there's just something about his paintings when I see him from, I think the color is a huge aspect of it. Yep. I'm very into mid-century modern, and
Me too.
There's something about his paintings that very often that feel just very, kind of retro from a different, time period. So I think, it's part of that. And so many people, I've seen quotes where they're like, it just looks like someplace I'd love to be,
Yeah.
Whether it's like, in this bar or all the different, locations and the places he puts, but there is just something about it that just has a very magnetic quality, and I think it's, it's the color, the imagery, there's a lot of, some art director once, I think, called it joy de vie, which is just kind of like joy of life that comes through his paintings.
Yep.
It's just, but I kind of love that there's something that's a little bit unexplainable or undefined, what attracts it, me so much to his paintings or his art.
Hey gang, we'll get back to the Tiki conversation here in just a second, but I want to let y'all know they have t-shirts for sale. They are screen printed in America. The artist is Tony Canepa, and they're going for $20 a piece, $25 including shipping. If you're interested in buying one, go to my website, tikiwithray.com, and then there's a tab that says buy a t-shirt. Click on there and just follow the prompts. So thank you very much. Let's talk about the gallery.
Okay.
That you ended up buying this at.
Yeah.
And this is the book for the gallery?
Well, this was the book that came out for the show.
For the show?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was called Night of the Tiki.
Night of the Tiki.
So it was Copro Nason Gallery, which was a fairly small gallery in LA, but a very, a great gallery that was, very well known sort of, in its, subculture or genre that it existed in. So I think it was 2001. Mm-hmm. And by this point, Shags exhibits or art openings had started within LA, especially gotten just, very popular.
Yep.
There was a waiting list for his originals for this show, I think the waiting list was maybe, I've heard from like 60 to 90 people were on a waiting list.
On the waiting list?
To buy an original. And, it's funny going back to that very first time when I stumbled onto his artwork, and I knew nothing of the art world. And I remember seeing him, and I thought about it. And a couple of days later, I went back to La Luz de Jesus, and I was going to go buy one of the paintings. And at that point, I think the originals were about $900. And so I went in and talked to one of the people. I was like, hey, I want to buy one of those. And they just kind of looked at me like I was crazy, like, those all sold instantly. And if you ever go to an art show, there's a little red dot on the wall next to the painting, which means it's sold. Well, I very, very quickly learned out, what that meant.
That means
it's sold.
Too late.
You're way too late. So my wife and I went, to the opening night of the show, and we weren't, anywhere on the list. Every painting had been sold.
Yeah.
12 paintings total that are all featured in the book, and it was just. Such a his shows at that point, there was just such a buzz in the air, so many people, and it was just a madhouse. You could barely hear, and the gallery was just packed. So very few people get originals, so they usually release a painting or two as a print.
Yep.
And then there was the book. So we were at the show, and I was waiting in line to get up to the counter to purchase a print. So I finally got up to the counter, and I'm buying the print and the book. And the lady that was helping me took a phone call, and it was really hard to hear, but there was just something about the phone call that I thought I picked up on, something was going on with one of the paintings. So she got off, and she was resuming helping my purchase. So I just asked her, I said, is somebody not buying one of the paintings? For some reason I thought that was the conversation. And she said, yeah, one of them, the person called and said they're not going to be able to buy it. And so I asked her which one. And so she pointed to this one. The title of this one is The Broken Bottle.
The Broken Bottle.
And literally in 4 seconds, I said, can I buy it?
Yeah.
To her. And she said, yeah, if you want to. So it was, even at that time, this was 2001, it was $3,300. So that was a pretty big purchase for me at that point. Now with what his originals cost, that's a pretty good bargain. But the great thing is, so there was 12 paintings in the show, and I had already picked out this painting as my favorite when I viewed every painting in the show. And
it just so happened that was the one.
Yeah, so I felt like it was one of the few very serendipitous moments of my life. That right place, right time. I actually overheard and asked, and I remember turning to it wasn't even my wife at that point. My girlfriend became my wife later, and we're like, okay, let's do it. And I bought it. I still actually on the back. There's still a bag that has the receipt from when I purchased it, and one of the things that I love about it is it's one of his few paintings that feature a real person. So this is Frank Sinatra, which I love.
I thought that was Old Blue Eyes.
Yeah, I love Frank Sinatra, and he's done a few that have a few people, but back then it was pretty uncommon that he, featured, a known person in his paintings. So I was just,
look at this picture. It's just like this again. This is a world that I want to be in. I want to be in this tiki bar with Frank Sinatra, with this chick, and obviously without the broken bottle. I mean, because that's some good rum in there. Look at it. There's the pucker fish up there.
Yep. And one thing that for people who are familiar with Shag's art have kind of learned this, but one very key hallmark of Shag's artwork is he says whenever he does a painting, there's a story in his head that he's telling in the painting, but he doesn't tell anybody what it is because he wants people to come up with their own interpretation, which I think is fantastic. And as this is one of his more earlier paintings, but as his works became, more elaborate, larger, there's a lot more going on. You can really come up with some good, situations of your own of what the theme is or what's happening, in the picture. So that's another thing that I really, enjoy, that kind of whimsy of his artwork. and I think it's neat that he doesn't tell anybody, because I'm sure a lot of people come up with a very different interpretation of his idea or inspiration when he did the painting.
I can't get over that this is an original.
Yeah.
But this isn't your only original.
No.
You have another one.
I am very fortunate to have one other original. So my wife and I were married in 2002. And my sister was able to reach out to Shag, and she said, I'd love to commission a painting from you for, my brother and his wife, have it be their wedding gift. By this time in Shag's career, he's just starting to skyrocket. And
he's Shag now.
Yeah, he's Shag, and he's super busy, I mean, it was still kind of at a period where, compared to certainly, later, his stuff was still relatively affordable. Yeah. And my sister said he was very nice and said, I'd love to. He said, I get asked for, commissions, pretty much almost every day. And I wish I could, but under deadlines for other shows and stuff I'm, already signed up for. And my sister's pretty persuasive. And she was able to, tell him that, my wife and I, they go see your Tiki Tone shows and they go to all your openings and, you're collecting your stuff. And she was very persuasive. And she said, ultimately said, okay, I would do it. And so awesome. I remember when it's really still like a vivid memory when my wife and I were opening our wedding presents, and we opened that. And, instantly I'm like, oh, it's a Shag. And then I just kind of assumed it was a print at first. And I'm like, gosh, I almost, especially at that point, I pretty much knew every print, that was released or came out. And I'm like,
well, you're like, what's the story with this?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't remember this print. And and I was thinking, oh, and it's even like wedding themed. And then my sister told me, and, my wife and I were just absolutely like blown away. And so this is
unbelievable.
Yeah.
So is that supposed to be you and your wife in the picture?
Yeah. So it's
that's
like,
awesome.
And I know he just, with how, crazy his schedule is, he hasn't done a lot of commissions from what I've read. So we feel, incredibly lucky to have, and so it's always, ever since, it's always, been in our bedroom, and is just kind of a great story, a great gift. And I think it, certainly speaks a lot to, Shag as
that's
a person.
So cool, Paul.
It is.
It really is.
It really is.
This is the first episode of this series.
Yeah.
And you are the inspiration for this series, because you got a lot of Shag.
Yeah.
And we're going to go down that rabbit hole one episode at a time.
Okay.
And friends and family out there, this is Paul. You're going to be seeing a lot of them as we go through his Shag collection. So, Paul, thank you for having me over. Thank you for telling your stories of the original Shag work that you have. And then, we'll have you back on again real soon.
Great. Thanks for coming over. Yeah. It's a very fun subject to talk about.
Oh my God, absolutely. But so yeah, thank you.
Cool. Thank you.